7 o'clock, we'll get the meeting called to order. The first is our flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call.
All right. Ms. Bullenbacher is absent. Mr. Chandler?
Here.
Ms. Compatello?
Here.
Mr. Hof? Here. Mr. Oliverio?
Here.
Ms. Kalnick is absent. Mr. Rodilla?
Here.
Just, Mayor Perry? Here. Solicitor Corbel? Here. Engineer Keenan?
Here.
And myself. We have a quorum.
Great. All right, the consent agenda on the OneDrive were the council meeting minutes from July 25th. Also, the bill list from August 8th. There are 2 bills that are being held right now of all of them. And a motion to approve the August 8th, 2024 consent agenda pending bill list approved by the Borough President,
So moved.
Manager, and Treasurer.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Madilla, Ms. Comptello, any questions? Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue appearing on today's agenda. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Comments on non-agenda items will be taken at the end of tonight's meeting. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council has the option to respond or not at the end of the address. Please state your name and physical address for the record. Do we have anybody?
I think I'm the only one.
The only one? All right, Mr. Roma.
Hello, everybody. I'm here.
Yeah, name and address.
My name is Corey Roma. First time here. My name is Corey Roma. My address is 264 West Dugan Street, Apartment D. I'm here to talk about the zoning ordinance update, and specifically it refers to ADU or ADUs or additional accessory dwelling units. Thank you. Additional.
That's okay.
Based off of the last planning commission meeting, I learned that they're recommending that Crafton discontinue the use of ADUs, and I'm here to speak against that. Personally, as a member of an organization called Pro Housing Pittsburgh, I've come to learn about all the different ways that we can improve and alleviate the housing crisis in our region. And ADUs kind of serves an important role in that. You know, speaking from personal experience, I grew up next to a house that had an ADU. The older residents built on an additional unit to the back of it, and they were able to avoid going and living in a retirement home because they were able to live in a 1-floor, low rent kind of a situation, and it allowed their children to take over ownership of the main house. And I feel like at a time where we really need to add to the housing supply rather than subtract it, ADUs can serve as a small but still meaningful role to keep residents, especially older residents and those who are like maybe don't have the income to afford a whole house, keep them in the community and also expand the amount of different housing options that we have so that we don't have so much of a one-size-fits-all kind of approach, because while we have many beautiful houses and homes throughout the borough, for speaking as a renter myself, having these kind of units is very important to keeping being affordable and being able to enjoy this community. So I would highly recommend that you do not consider that part of the zoning update. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on the list? Okay. For anybody on Zoom, please raise your hand. None raised. Next, we'll go to the president's report. Nothing to report that's not on the agenda for tonight. Mayor's report.
Right, so tonight I have to talk about the police chief search. The committee was very excited to find out that we have 19 resumes. And so we are coming before you today to ask to raise our cap from 7,800 to 11,800 so that we can add a second day for interviews. That still leaves us a little over $8,000 below budget. So, I don't know if anyone's got any questions, at all. So then, I would like to seek a motion to approve a $4,000 increase to the current 7,800 cap for the purpose of conducting additional interviews for the police chief search.
So moved.
Mr. Chandler,
Second,
Ms. Compatello, any questions or discussion?
so 19 submissions.
19 submissions.
Do we know what's typical for a community of our size?
The Chiefs Association was pretty pleased.
Sounds
With
good.
with the response. I mean, we're not going to be, they're not recommending that we interview all of them, but because the pool is so big.
Mhm.
We want to go beyond the initial, to get a better look.
Any more questions or comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
All right, that's it for me tonight. That was, well, I do have to say that, I have recently attended the, Pennsylvania Mayors, Association Conference, which was, extremely good conference. We got a lot of really good information and some high-powered guests, including our Lieutenant Governor and our Attorney General. We have some, really good handouts that I want to be sharing with the manager and our community and economic development manager that I think will help the community in public safety and being prepared for emergencies and things like that. So it was a very, very good conference.
Great. Thank you for attending and providing the report. Next, solicitors report.
I don't have anything on the agenda, but I did want to mention to council that the Office of Open Records that handles appeals from the borough from right to know requests, and Jim is becoming very familiar with that entity, but that they issued some guidance within the last month around anonymous right to know requests. There are some websites out there that anonymize folks or have they create names out
We
of.
talked about that at the mayor's conference.
Yes, I'm pretty sure you did. And so I'm going to talk with Jim about it. It's been on my list, but to see what our policy says about anonymous requests and make a determination as to how we should amend it if that's even necessary. The OR guidance indicated that we should address it in our policy, and that can be a basis for turning it down. But if your policy doesn't say that, you know, there's a potential that you may have to answer anonymous requests. So unless there's any objections, I'm going to work with Jim on that. Not that I'm looking for anything else to do. We have plenty to do here, but that's just something we need to. You guys haven't received any, but my other clients have received dozens. So
Yeah, we
you want
heard
to
a
be in a
lot about
position.
that.
Yeah, you want to be in
from
a
other
position to
mayors.
deal with it if it comes your way. So,
Mhm.
and that's all I have tonight.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Engineers report. Mr. Keenan.
Good evening. First item is the Broadhead project. Again, this is a major sewer infrastructure project coming up in the borough. Be affecting Belvedere and Broadhead Avenue with some other side streets getting upgrades as well. Two active updates with that. This is there's been some ongoing coordination with the federal agency EPA on getting the bid documents up to speed and how they want them set up and meeting all their requirements. So I know we're still waiting with Gateway to get those wrapped up as well. And that alternate was the Perrine Street sewer. We've since received the easement agreement and forwarded that to the property owner and still waiting for feedback from them on that. Moving on to the third project. Just to recap again, bound to Promenade, stairs have been poured and are complete. There's been some talk with the sub-consultant on the the handrails that are going to be installed there, and they have said that there's going to be a 10 to 12 week lead time on these handrails, so we're expecting, 2 to 3 months. And an idea was pitched that maybe we put up some temporary handrails in the meantime, but that's still a discussion to be had. I'm still waiting for some feedback on that from them. But as far as the Crafton to Walnut stairs, they have been demoed and they have been formed, but I think the next step is that they're going to be poured probably next week. Next is the paving program. Again, the awarded contractor has been made, and we have been having a pre-con. We had a pre-con meeting with them, and the latest update is really there are 2 inlets that are being affected by this paving program that need repaired in order to make the paving more successful. We plan on doing the Middle Street one in-house, and the Promenade one, we're gonna have the contractor hopefully do. But right now, that's where we stand with the paving program. And as far as the schedule goes, it is determined that once we do get the schedule, that it won't take long for this to happen. I was told it may be as quick as 2 days if this gets done, 1 day of milling, 1 day of paving, and then that should be it. But the inlet construction needs to happen first before the paving can, so that's why we're still doing with the inlets at this time.
Do we know how much, because we have to get a motion to approve that, so do you know how much that difference is for that?
I believe the inlet for Palmer was $12,600.
Yeah. And that still is under the budget for paving for the whole year, right?
I believe so, yes.
Right. So we need a motion to approve that $12,000 inlet, because it's a pretty difficult one. It's on a busy street and it's on a complicated piece, so we don't want to do it in-house. So we need a motion to approve the $12,600 addition to do the inlet, to get the paving started.
I thought the additional amount was used we added onto the paving schedule.
We did, but we were still below. We added, yeah.
That was very,
Remember
very
that.
close.
So this is still below the amount we had budgeted?
Yep.
The money is available.
Let me double check.
Um,
Yeah, the budget was 325. The estimate was 365.
That's not the bid.
Oh,
That's not the
Wait.
bid.
300.
Yeah, the bid was 300 and then we added an alternate.
With the ad alternate, it was 300.
The guy,
Right.
So it was 285.
Yeah, that's what.
With the guide rail, so it was 285 was the bid. 300 was with the guide rail, which we approved.
Right, so even with this, we're still $12,000 under the budget.
any other questions? Next item is.
No,
we
need a
Sorry.
Yeah.
We need a motion to approve the $12,000 addition, which is still under budget, but we need that inlet to be repaired. By Polino, who is doing the work.
In that case, I make a motion to approve the $12,600.
Do we need to put the motion to add it?
No.
No?
No,
So
we
it's
can, it doesn't need to be on the thing, it just needs to be, it's on the agenda already, so you can make a motion.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right, I learned something tonight.
Yep.
I'll second.
He did make a motion, yeah.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the $12,600 additional inlet charge
On promenade.
on Promenade.
Okay. So it's Mr. Chandler, Ms. Compatello, second. Okay, questions or discussion?
The work's currently being done as we speak.
No, yeah, I have to let them know if they're gonna do it or not.
What's the timetable for letting them know?
Well, the PM's been away this week on vacation, so best I can do is just let them know, and then I'll get a response hopefully as soon as possible.
Yeah, so they can't move forward with the paving until this is done. This happens with every paving contract. You typically have to go through and see our inlets have manholes fall in or changed. And you do some of them in-house if you can, but this one's a little more complicated, so we didn't want to put it on internal.
And you may have said this, but I wasn't expecting it, so I may have just missed it. How will this be handled? Is this something that the contractor who was already selected can simply add this on as a change order
Mhm.
to the already
That's what
approved
this is, a
bid.
change
Okay.
order, yeah.
Change their schedule?
No, because they have to wait till this is done anyway, so it just is a matter of, do they do it or do we do it?
It's not something that requires additional, study or engineering. It's just a fairly straightforward, they can
Yeah.
go ahead and do it.
Additional comments or questions?
Where are they in the schedule, like the road paving schedule for completion at this point? Are they on schedule? Are they behind schedule?
I mean, they haven't started yet.
Hasn't started at all yet.
No,
Okay.
haven't started at all yet.
When were we expecting them to be completed by?
I mean, probably like end of the month,
Okay.
but again, this is work that needs to get done first and you still have to let them know and. But once the inlet's complete, their paving schedule should just be brief, milling, paving of the selected streets and could be as done as 2 days, weather permitting.
But you
So-
mean they haven't done this portion of the road paving? We had other areas on our road paving program. Those are not impacted by this.
Yeah, no paving has been done yet.
No paving of any
No.
of it has been done.
Because what he just said, they literally do this in like 2 days.
The whole thing.
Because you're not doing construction, you're just milling it. So you have one miller come through, mill it, and then another thing comes through and paves it. And that's how long it takes. So. Yeah.
There's a fly up here. This cocktail decided to give it to us. It's horrible.
Shoot it right back.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, move on to the next time, the PA American water main replacement that has been going on in the borough. Guess it's been pretty far along. Parkview and Crafton Boulevard have been repaired, fully restored. We did receive the compensation for the work that was done on Starrett Street. We will be doing that paving at another time. And the remaining work is on Union Avenue where they had done their water main repairs, and I was told the first and second week in August, they'd be doing their service line repairs. And once those repairs are complete, then they will go in and restore the road back to its brick state. That will move on to the EV charging.
Is that the last water?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Next time is the EV charging, and I believe Jim wants to speak with this.
Yep. So we were not able to change this grant scope. So we had $120,000 grant, an LSA grant, which is a local state share grant or local share account grant. And since we're not able to change it, and at this very same time that we found out that Connect is applying for funding. So we are going to go in with Connect to apply for funding for this. This would be a way to basically do the charging that we were already thinking about doing, but it basically puts us on pause. The two charging units that were proposed at the parking lot in the school district's parking lot are still approvable because they were in the original grant. We're just not, what we were told essentially is we're not able to move the location. And so that limits our ability to use it for something else. So currently, we probably won't be moving forward with the Electrify Allegheny program until we find out if Connect can get this money. And we've heard that this is a federal grant, and they've been trying to get this money out the door. So we think there's a pretty good chance that we'll end up getting it. But that's my update for EV charging. If you want to get back from there.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the next item, which is the trail feasibility study. A little bit of typo with this update. There's actually some final touches being done with it right now, and I've reached out to the grant project manager, DCNR, and consulted with them on some possible strategies to reaching out to consultants or companies that specialize in trail studies and trail developments. And she said that she would put together a list for me of some other consultants that have won work in the past that they've worked with. And looking forward to getting that and seeing who we can send this out to once it's done. Next item is the Public Works Building. Two updates, I guess. Again, the wetlands permit was approved. This is gonna include some expansion to the stormwater pond as well as mitigate a little bit of wetlands in front of the building and increase the gravel that is gonna be going in front of the building to allow further access. I've also reached out to Gateway to get the utility plan for the site to see where the utilities are going to be aligned and connected and tied into their sources. The idea is to hopefully do some of this work in-house, and to do so, we're gonna have to probably rent a bigger excavator. So it'd be good to just go at the base and excavation, then hopefully move on to putting in some of these utilities for the site as well. So that's where we stand with that. If there's any questions. Next is the Crafton Boulevard streetlights. Again, these are the decorative lights on Crafton Boulevard. They've since been updated with some light shields, and that's actually been completed. Next item is the Green Light Go Steuben Linden project, the intersection renovations and updates. The project has been awarded, and given the go-ahead to Gateway to put together the award documents. And it's important to note that once this project is started, the contractor will go ahead and put in the order for the light poles, which is likely to take 8 to 10 months. So this project probably won't get started until next year sometime. Any questions with that? Moves us to the last item, which is the C20 updates. Again, these are some upcoming major sewer projects that will be going on in the borough. The separation projects, basically those designs are done. There's some final touches that need to be put on the plans and get the bid documents together, but we put that on hold until we get the actual project grant award for that. As far as the GSI projects, those are being updated based on the comments that we've received from Alcosan and Tim Prevost and their consultant. They've had some comments in our last meeting on the plans, which is essentially getting the project to the point where it's going to be fully designed. But we did receive the waiver for the letter of intent, the LOI, so we don't have to submit that. But the next steps will be to reapply, hopefully in September for the next one. If there's no questions, that concludes the engineer's report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kane. And manager's report, Mr. Price.
All right, the first thing in my manager's report is a presentation by our LGA intern, Christy Corso. So with that, I will hand it over to her to talk about a land value tax. And she's gonna, make sure you got one. Is that what, you know? Yeah. It's an area, Mike, it'll pick you up.
Should I share the screen?
Yes.
Zoom? Thank you so much, Jim. And thank you, council, for having me. My name is Christy Curso. I am a second-year student at University of Pittsburgh, the graduate public administration program, and I'm the local government academy's intern for Crafton Borough, doing a study on land value tax for the borough of Crafton. So I just wanted to introduce you to the internship, what I've been doing all summer. So the land value tax was introduced to the borough by Jim Price, the borough manager, after he read a Strong Towns article, which described the benefits that a land value tax could have for a community like Crafton. The internship is through the Local Government Academy, which is a nonprofit organization to promote local government. And the goals of this internship were to determine the impact of a land value tax in Crafton and to assist elected officials in considering options. So a land value tax. Our current property tax structure is such that our land and building values are taxed at the same rate. A land value tax structure would shift this, this rate from buildings to land. So land is taxed at a higher rate than buildings are. So Crafton, like many communities around the United States and Pennsylvania, has some issues with blight, absentee landlords, and inefficient land use. So I have some statistics about that. There are 198 tax delinquent properties in Crafton. 7% of parcels in Crafton are vacant, and 38% of these vacant properties are tax delinquent as well. 4.5 million square feet are vacant property in Crafton, and there are over 725,000 square feet of parking lots in Crafton. So some of the goals in looking into a land value tax for Crafton would be with the goals to encourage healthy development in the borough, to discourage blight, absentee landlords, and to encourage efficient land use. And this study was done at a revenue neutral stance, so there would be no revenue increase to the borough if a land value tax was implemented. So land speculation is a key part of the story of our current property tax system. Why do people or businesses buy land and not improve upon it? The more public assets that exist can positively affect the value of a property. So land has inherent value that is built in by investments by the public or by your neighbors, improvements to your neighbor home or schools, the sewer systems, transportations, etc. All of that improves the value of a property. Even if a vacant property owner isn't doing the improvements themselves, they can capitalize on the improvements around them. So I wanted to show an example to demonstrate how a land value tax system would work in Crafton. So to start off, we want to look at what the current property system looks like. In a standard tax system, we have a flat millage rate. For Crafton, it's 8.5 mils. And so I have two properties to show here. The first property is a lot valued at $20,000 with a building on top of it valued at $80,000 for a total assessed value of $100,000. And the second property is a lot valued at the same price, $20,000, but there's no building on top of it. So the total assessed value for property number 2 is $20,000. So if property owner number 1 decided that they wanted to make any types of improvements to their property, and they increased their building value such that it would be increased to $150,000, their new property taxes would be $1,288. So this would be an increase of 50% of what their current property tax would be, which is a sizable increase. If property owner number 2 wanted to build a building on their property such that the building would be $80,000 in value, the total value, new value would be $100,000. Their new property taxes would be $859. So this is a tax increase of 400%, which is sizable and demonstrates why people don't choose to build on vacant properties very often. So under a land value tax, this would change. So we have the two same properties as before. Property number 1, same assessed value, $100,000. Property number 2 is the same vacant lot at $200,000. But in this situation, we have a split value tax or a land value tax where our land is being taxed at 23 mils and the building is being taxed at 3 mils. So we can see this huge shift of the rate onto the land. And this shift brings the impact of doing improvements off the property owner. So for property owner number 1, if they their current property taxes would look like $700 compared to the $859 of our current system. So they would see a tax decrease under a land value tax system. Property owner number 2, the vacant property would see a tax increase. Their taxes would be $460 as compared to the $171 in our current tax system. Because again, we are shifting the taxing to the value of the land and off of the buildings and the improvements done on the land. So if property owner number 1 decided to do these same improvements as in example number 1, they improve the value of their building $50,000 under the land value tax, their taxes would only increase to $850. So that's a 21% increase, sizably down from 50% in our current taxing situation. And then likewise for property owner number 2 of this vacant property, they decided to build a property on their properties. Their new land value tax would be $700. So that's an increase of 52%, which is sizably down from 400% in our current taxing situation. So this demonstrates how land value tax can help incentivize development in communities and disincentivize land speculation and absentee landlords. So other municipalities are doing this all over the world, the country, but most notably in Pennsylvania itself. There are many cities who currently use the land value tax: Allentown, Harrisburg, Scranton, and others. Pittsburgh actually used it for 83 odd years. And then there are other smaller communities that have similar population sizes to Crafton, such as Evansburg, Bridgeville, and Clareton, which also use the land value tax currently. So the results of our analysis found that the land value tax in Crafton would lower property taxes for 54% of homeowners. 63% of parcels in Crafton's which house wage earners will see an increase of less than $25 or a decrease in their taxing. 65% of commercial parcels would see a tax increase as their lot sizes are usually bigger. And 83% of delinquent properties would see tax increases. And then finally, 100% of vacant properties would see sizable tax increases at 176% increase. There are some potential challenges or considerations that you might want to consider when implementing a land value tax. The first is countywide property reassessments. So in Allegheny County, we don't have cyclical, consistent property reassessments. The only way for a taxing body to bring properties up to values that are similar to what they are at sale price or market value is through the appeals process. And a taxing body can only appeal when a property has been recently sold. So this leads to variations in assessed property values and can lead to exacerbated effects from the land value tax with these variations in certain neighborhoods. The second consideration would be the number of tax delinquent properties. So with a land value tax, we're shifting the burden from buildings onto land, and thus we're trying to disincentivize vacant properties. So shifting the revenue coming in onto vacant properties, Crafton has 38% of vacant properties in Crafton are tax delinquent. So if they're not paying now, will they pay later? That's a consideration to have. And then the third thing is there is no clear comparison to Crafton from other municipalities that have been using land value tax. We have other municipalities that use it that have similar populations but have varying demographics or are implementing it at different ratios, and those have different impacts on the community as well. So the conclusions of this land value tax study are that that land value tax is a potential solution to mitigate blight and inefficient land use in Crafton. It could reduce the cost of construction and improvements, and it could spur development while bringing taxing increases down for homeowners, and it brings other benefits to homeowners. But an implementation of a land value tax in Crafton would be most benefited by consistent and accurate property reassessments, and it's also best to be implemented with other blight reduction strategies that the borough is considering, such as land banking and conservatorship. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions from council? Good presentation.
That was really well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have a question.
Yeah, of course.
In your research, was there a reason that the city of Pittsburgh stopped using it?
Yeah, there we go.
Yes, the reason is because of the property reassessments. When the property reassessments were done, they were so varying and jarring to the people. Along with the land value tax, the Pittsburgh had implemented a bump in the land value tax millage. So that just further exacerbated those differences with a property reassessment, which is why it's crucial that we consider that.
Yeah, we met with Tom Murphy. We sat down with the old mayor of Pittsburgh, who was the one who made the decision back in 2002 when they had to make the decision. And he was basically like, we would have kept it.
Yeah.
Had property assessments come back right, but that year when they were forced to do them, there was no concern over the split between land value and property value. They just arbitrarily would assign the value to the land or property to bring it up to a normal rate. And so you have some properties, in Crafton, this is too true, you have some properties that are $80,000 next to a property that's $20,000 with the exact same buildings on them. So,
Variations are starting.
Yeah.
Hold on, I had another question.
Yeah.
I already forgot it. Let's see if I can get it back. The millage that you used for these examples, was that based in something, or was that just like a common standard? How did you choose the millage of 23 and 3?
Yes, so the 23 and 3 is just an example, but all the research that I did, it was a very similar split. It was 24 and 4, I believe. I came up at those as revenue neutral stance. So we took the revenue that you were currently getting under the current property taxes at 8.59 current assessed values. We took that revenue, and there's a function in Excel that will basically find the perfect millage rate with these qualifications while keeping that revenue neutral. So under a 24 point something and 4 point something, the revenue for Crafton Borough would stay the same under that split.
and you can set up that split however you like. Clairton has a 9-to-1 split. Because they have shifted almost the entire tax burden of their town to, a steel. But you can mess with those ratios. A pure land value tax is actually not taxing property at all and only taxing the land, which is also something that you could essentially do.
And to add on to it, the 24 and 4 is a 5-to-1 ratio. So we wanted to keep the land on a specific ratio. So we already also looked into this at 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 7-to-1, 8-to-1, 10-to-1. But we found that it doesn't impact anyone different in those varying ratios. It just increases or decreases the amount of taxes that they'll be doing. So if this was implemented, it would be implemented in stages, in slow stages. We started with the 5-to-1 to do all analysis off of.
And was there any, I'm sure that you could research this endlessly, so I don't know how far you were able to go, but is there anything you came across from perhaps any of those other case studies that looked at how they dealt with the tax delinquent properties and what happened when the land value tax was implemented? How did they get that from the tax delinquent properties? Was it effective, or did they just continue to be delinquent? Was there anything you came across that showed how that panned out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually didn't come across any of it. And what we've talked about is that if this was implemented to mitigate the effects of tax delinquent property, there'd have to be a lot of community engagement of other options that might be involved for homeowners or property owners to be able to change their behavior in accordance.
Yeah, another thing too to note is the tax delinquent properties represent $25,000 out of 2.3 million. So it's a pretty small effect. So a simple recommendation would be to bump up the millage a tiny bit, which would essentially keep it revenue neutral. But the millage would be slightly higher than it currently is. But it would look like, because you have to take into account that we're shifting some of the burden onto tax delinquent properties, we would have to spread that out across the rest of the community. So we would end up getting the same revenue because you're comparing it to properties that won't pay. So if we remove those tax delinquent properties, you could do the analysis that way, but it's really a pretty small, in the overall number, yes, it has an effect, but it's pretty small overall.
Of our tax delinquent properties, and I don't think this was one of the statistics in there. How many, I know you said how many of them are vacant, but not how many there were total.
So it's-
how many tax delinquent properties do we have that are not vacant? What's
I
the
still
split?
didn't take that out of the slide.
Yeah. So the 158 tax delinquent properties.
Okay.
And that's out of like 3,000 parcels in Crafton. So it's not that big. And then the percentage was the number of vacant properties that are also tax delinquent. So that was 38%. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
More or less,
Oh.
I didn't quite catch the number you said, but 198 total delinquent properties is
Yeah.
just a small fraction of our overall properties.
Exactly. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Good luck in school. Thank you for the work.
Okay. Moving on to the next item on the list, the leaf vac and chipper box. We need to get approval for, the purchase of a Tarco Windy 100 custom chipper box. This is budgeted, it was budgeted for $75,000, so this is over. We have a grant offset of $65,000 that goes away after this year. So if we do want to buy this, we have to buy it this year. And I will say that this is probably our best or most popular program. The chipper list and the amount of effort that goes into that every summer and every year is quite a lot. So it's a big asset for the community, and this improves some of the abilities that we have with that. And as I said, the 65,000 offset by the grant offset. So can I have a motion to approve the purchase of the Tarco leaf vac and chipper box for a total of $97,000 and $97,435?
So
Ms. Costello,
Second.
Mr. Chandler. Questions or discussion?
what's the status of the equipment we have currently?
We have a chipper that we currently have, and then we have a very old chipper that we will be selling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any estimation of the value of it?
I don't.
Not this time.
So what was budgeted for?
75. So this is $20,000 over the budget. But we still have not bought the dump truck that we had budgeted for this year as well. If we wait until the last quarter to buy that, then we can shift that cost onto mostly next year and spread that out better. And we'll make a point of getting better quotes and estimates on public works issue, because we've had several things that were under budgeted this year.
So is that where the discrepancy came from, that we budgeted for it, but it costs more than we thought it would cost?
Basically, yeah. But, we applied for this grant and thought it would cost $75,000 3 years ago.
Okay.
And so it wasn't updated and changed.
So what would be the cost then? Is it the differential of the 30,000?
What do you mean?
30,000 between the grant and the
Yeah, that's the cost of the borough, $30,000.
30, okay, and budgeted was 15?
10.
10, 65 to 75,
Yeah.
okay, so the difference is what, 25,000?
20,000. 21, 22,000.
22 to 35.
There you go, thank you.
Clearly.
Which one did you say we'd be selling again? The old chipper, right?
We have an old chipper I think that is what, I have to look, but I think that's what would be sold.
And then the other, is the leaf vac and chipper the same?
We have two leaf vacs, and we need them because,
this
and
would
we
be
have one
additional.
that is decrepitly old. And they've been making it work. But I'm not sure if we're gonna get rid of it right away, but we'd have to check on that, yeah.
What do we do with all of the mulch that it ends up
And we have a
being?
monster pile.
A lot of people use it,
Oh, yeah.
but we don't use it all, right? Does it just get?
We have a constant pile that's being turned over, and they have to check it, so they have a compost pile and a wood chip pile. And they're pretty significant, they're large down by the Public Works building. So we keep going through them, I don't know that we're getting to a point where we can't keep up, or we're not having people take enough. So it hasn't been an issue to now, but I don't think it's an issue, they keep filling them and people empty them every week. Those containers down at the park are filled often, so. It's a really, all of this is one of our most popular, probably our most popular program that we run.
And it's used for the landscape greenery spaces along all the corridors and everything too, right?
Any other questions or discussion? So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
All right. Thank you. And, the next thing on the item is a document disposition, list. This is a resolution to confirm old documents are being disposed of according to state retention policy. So I'd like a motion to approve resolution 2024-09 for the disposition of dated borough documents.
So moved. Mr. Pope,
Second.
Mr. Chandler, questions or discussion? The resolution was on the OneDrive, so you can look at all the documents. These are documents from the eighties and nineties that we will be disposing of, so, and various files.
Yeah, we found a stash in the bell tower.
Yeah,
We
you'd like,
passed a resolution last year to change and update the policy to be more in line with or maybe it was even 2 years ago. For document, shortly after you started, because you noticed
Right.
that we needed to update how we disposed of documents.
Yeah.
It was addressed, we passed a resolution. What is the difference here? Is this just like a status update that we need to pass a new one to confirm that we're still doing it? or
Oh, no,
is
we need
this-
to pass, every time we throw out any document, we need to list what we're throwing out and how much there is. So every time we throw out documents, we are not allowed to throw out documents.
So
without-
since the last time we passed one, nothing's been thrown out, they just sit and pile up until we pass another resolution?
Oh, yeah, yeah, but I mean, we're not talking about like paperwork that's just around the office. We're talking about more official documents like bills and
Okay.
things like that, you would typically keep for a period of time. We're not talking about like, oh, I drafted a letter and I didn't use the draft. We don't have to dispose of that. These are like official documents.
So it's just like the next round of summer cleaning.
Well, and it's, this summer cleaning was never done. Yeah. And we've just found pockets of other documents that I didn't realize were there. I thought it was all decorations in the bell tower and it's not. So, yeah.
examples are 85 to 95 expense reports. You know, I don't think we're going to need them.
Yeah.
For that long. Roll call sheets from 85 to 95. Accounts payable from 1999, so that means we have 2,000 present. You need to check one from that time period, you can do that.
We're on track if we have a budget shortfall for the chippers, start selling tickets to our newly cleaned bell tower.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Ring the bell, it doesn't work, but you can ring it. Okay, any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next is just an update, the waste collection RFP, as we reported at the last meeting, we've received 3 bids from Valley Waste, Waste Management, County Hauling, and we will formally discuss the findings of this at the next council meeting, August 22nd, and seek public input. So we'll put out an announcement too. We want to be able to dig in and analyze the data, and we now have had legal review, so we do know that all 3 of them passed the legal review. So now we're just gonna have a financial review and we'll go forward from there and talk about that at August 22nd.
And this is again encouraging the public to come, to look, bring your opinions, comments as we go through them. I don't think we would pass any RFPs at that meeting necessarily, right? But it would be,
We might at the next meeting.
yeah, at the next meeting. So we definitely want public opinion on trash collection, what your thoughts are about now and the RFPs that we've received, because this affects all of us.
All right, and no other questions. I'll move on to the next item. Parking issue on South Grandview Avenue. So as I mentioned at the last meeting, we've had issues with people parking head in on a street where they're supposed to park parallel. There was concern from the people who live at these set of townhouses that if we make that change, they won't have places to park. And I realized that the people that we really need to talk to were the owners, because they're encroaching on properties in the back of their properties. And everybody I spoke to on that street, who has a property that is abutted by the back, basically wants us to force them to park parallel so that they can get the back of their property back. But some of them have made changes based on that happening, and haven't been able to use part of their land. So we're going to require that they park parallel, and put lines in. If that does not fix the problem and there's continues to be a parking issue, the residents from those, I'm sure will let us know. And we'll go from there.
And that was what we approved, sorry,
There was no approval.
or we discussed and said that we were going to do. the
Yeah,
parallel.
there was concern, because I had suggested possibly doing a permitting process.
Mhm.
And there was concern that that would be too much of a lift and why should we get involved? And so now after having the conversation with the property owners, they are interested in having them properly park the way they're supposed to on that road legally. And so, and it's, in my opinion, their call because it's their property that's being encroached upon. So that's the recommendation. The recommendation is they either, well, is to at least have them park parallel, whether we do a permitting process or not is down the road, I would think, or a question for council.
So I have a question about this because we did discuss that and it seems like for a very small area, we're talking about. We did talk about. Was it really worth doing a parking permit program for just this one tiny area when the root of the problem is people parking on other people's property, which is theoretically a problem you could have anywhere. And please don't anybody do that. Let's not spread it. If now that we are doing the repainting and trying to enforce that the residents need to park in the allotted parallel spaces and not on other people's property. If it is happening again, what is the recourse for those property owners? Can they call Borough or call police and report trespassing, report a vehicle parked on their personal property? Is that already happening? Can we?
Well, I have not had the conversation with Chief Sumter yet, but that was the next step.
I would
in
believe
this.
that would be the
Right,
case.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that would be because when you do this, obviously people are gonna be upset. We plan to put letters in everybody's door, so they'll have evidence. We'll probably not do it for a number of weeks or what have you, and then have it happen at a certain date. And then we'll have them paint lines on so that it's obvious that this is a parallel parking situation. We could also temporarily, I wouldn't want to do it permanently, but we could temporarily put parking, those things that they have when you go head in typically, but you could use those to create a kind of false curb. So that now they have something to park against that's not on the property.
I was wondering too, if we could consider doing something like, again, property owners would have to be okay with this, but even temporarily, some small stakes or little wire posts with little flags saying private property, because if the pattern has been established that people think they can park there, we need to understand where the private property begins. Is that something we could offer?
I don't know. That's a question for Steve. I don't know. I guess we could do that, but I don't know if that would be necessary, but yeah.
You want me to answer that?
You can, then assume it is possible if the property owners want to allow us to do it.
It is, but you could just advise them that they can do it
They can do
themselves.
it.
Okay,
We could tell them where the line is.
sure, okay.
All right. Any more questions about that before I move on? Okay. Where was I at? Rental inspection ordinance update. So I just wanted to let council know, we have, on your drives, there's a new draft of a rental inspection ordinance. And that is one thing I meant to have today on the changes, but I don't have the list of changes with me, but I will at the next meeting, and that's when it's been advertised for, so we can approve it at the next meeting. I just wanted to let everybody know about it this meeting. The main changes have been who's responsible for reaching out is one change, so we are going to reach out directly as opposed to waiting for people to come to us. Additionally, it's gonna be a 3-year, every single, a 3-year period in which every single rental has to be inspected. Where currently, we only inspect when they change hands. So if you live someplace for 10 or 20 years, you've never been inspected. Whereas this will mean that every 3 years, every rental unit in the borough will get inspected.
And this was discussed many moons ago, I believe, relative to the fire on Belvedere and then the apartment building fire on Belvedere and prior to that. So I know this has been discussed and we weren't able to go into places that weren't meeting code because of what our current ordinance is. And this would make that change. So this is around public safety. Um,
And it's around blight. It's a huge, it's a very important tool to get rid of, basically negligent owners. Who aren't taking care of their properties, because they often have people who are in their properties for long periods of time because, they don't have a lot of money and no place to go. So,
and this is to make sure fire alarms, those kind of things are all in place. Smoke detectors.
yes. Any questions on that before I move forward? Okay. The next update is just an update that's been on there for a number of meetings now, that the budget process schedule. The finance committee will see a draft of the budget at the meeting on the 14th, and then we will have our first our budget workshop, or it'll be introduced at the 22nd meeting. Then we'll have our first official budget workshop in the first week in September. Any questions on that? Before we move forward? Nope. All right, that concludes my report.
Thank you. All right, standing committee reports, finance, administration, sustainability, Ms. Perry.
Well, I think our main thing is we do have the RFP that we're gonna discuss. Next meeting, and our budget workshop schedule is already set, so there's not much else for me to talk about. And the manager just mentioned that our next meeting will be next week.
Okay, thank you. Right, infrastructure and land use, Ms. Compitello.
Sure, I have two things this evening. First is the zoning ordinance update. A final draft was sent to the planning commission and to the steering committee. The planning commission is set to consider the final draft at their public meeting on August 27th. Steering committee met this evening, so I suppose this is the right time to give more updates on the current status. So the steering committee met this evening, immediately before this council meeting, to review the latest changes to the zoning ordinance, as well as the last round of review that came from the planning commission. Planning commission reviewed this and discussed it in their July meeting. At that time, we haven't gotten to the planning commission updates yet, but they did share a recommendation that we make a change to the zoning ordinance. So the steering committee talked about the planning commission's recommendation and also talked about process. If it makes sense, I thought I might start with process, which is straightforward, and then talk through some of the steering committee discussion. So the process for this is the planning commission has done one review of our zoning ordinance. They have not yet made a decision on it. They sent back a recommendation to council that we'll be talking about this evening. But the planning commission per state code is also a body that needs to approve it. And so their next step will be at their next meeting in August, they will approve. Well, they will have it on their agenda and see what they decide. They will be on their agenda to vote to approve the new zoning ordinance. Then it needs to go to the county for county review. They'll have a 45-day period. And then the final step is that it will come to council for council vote and council adoption. So the first thing we talked about at this, not the first thing, but the first thing I'm sharing tonight, straightforward thing we talked about at the steering committee meeting, is the way that process plays out and if we need to make any adjustments for the sake of council. So council has been informed about this process as it's been going on. We had a debrief a few weeks ago about just what to expect, but council has not yet seen the draft. So the way this process works, once the planning commission votes to approve it, it goes to the county. Council will be able to see it. If council has any edits, and they are substantial edits, it will have to go back through that review process again. So we can do that, but it would have to go back to planning commission for another vote, and it would have to go back to the county for another review. We could amend that schedule and get the updated draft with all latest rounds of edits included and circulate that to council in advance of that planning commission meeting, or see if they would like to delay their vote until their September meeting. Did I capture that right, Jim?
The only thing I would change is that we don't have to wait for planning commission approval to send it to the county. We could send it to the county right now, but we don't suggest that, because if there are changes, as Kirsten said, then it has to go start the process all over again.
Yeah. Which doesn't which we can do, but we did want to put this in front of council because we talked through this tonight and realized that we hadn't gone through really in detail what that meant, and council has not seen the full draft. So is there a desire to be able to review and comment on the full draft before the planning commission votes on it?
Or even before we send it to the county.
Before we send it to the county?
Yeah, because
Currently,
county, we
it's-
have that 45-day delay. If
Yeah.
planning commission has to see it again, that's not as much of a lift.
Right.
Right.
But if there are changes.
Yeah.
If there are changes that council wants to make, and they are more than minor, like spell check.
Yeah.
If there are changes that council wants, then
And they're substantive. Yep.
we would have to go through the county review again. So the question is, we wanted to give you all an update on that schedule. Currently, it's on track to go to the planning commission for their final vote at their meeting at the end of August.
Yeah, and we had suggested, I think at the end of that meeting, we suggested that we bring it to council at the next meeting. You'll have a draft. I don't, if you wanna, if we give you the draft and you have any discussion and you wanna ask questions about it, you can ask questions about it at the next meeting. And we can do it again at the September meeting. So if you have any additional questions, and that way, everybody on council has had a chance to review it. They know what it's been sent from they know what the planning commission is approving. So then you can discuss. And then that way, when it goes to the county for review, we're not gonna be surprised when we bring it back to council and suddenly Vince is like, no, we don't want this, and so we wanna make sure that that doesn't happen to slow down our, review process.
So it sounds like there is a desire on council to be able to read it and review it and take it in. Am I? not?
Commissions, I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can circulate it as soon as it's updated. And I suppose, because there are some final revisions based on all the feedback that our economic development director is still making and the manager is still making. And so when that's ready, it can go out. And I suppose we still have between now and the planning commission meeting, if all of you have time to look through it and you have a lot of comments, let borough manager know. And we can give the planning request that the planning commission delay, because they may have, we can let them know that there may be edits coming. And if nobody has any, then they can stay on schedule. Does that sound accurate?
But if one council person has an edit, that doesn't mean that it changes the whole document, though.
No, it would have to be approved by.
Right, that's what I mean. So it's not where one person would just be able to say, oh, I don't like this, scrap it. The document would have to be part of a discussion where we would then, as a body, say, we want to make these changes.
Well, not necessarily, because we haven't approved it yet, so it's still a working document. If someone were to make, I suppose it would depend on the nature of the comment, but if someone had a comment they submitted to the borough manager, you could see if it was in line with, if it was a minor comment or something that needed to go back for further deliberation.
Right.
Which could potentially be handled in the form of an email of, here are some of the changes that were recommended to the steering committee or to the planning commission. Are you willing to approve the document with these changes that came in from council, rather than potentially make those changes after they approve it?
But what I'm saying is we would probably have to, as council, say these are recommended changes versus just one person saying.
Oh, right. When I was saying that, I'm saying if someone brought something up
Mhm.
and then all of council agreed that that should
Yeah.
change.
Yeah,
right.
that's it, but it just can't be, because I think, as Ms. Compatello was saying, if you have any comments or edits, send them to us and we'll send them to the planning commission. But we can't do that because they have to be discussed here and then recommended to the planning commission to make any changes versus one person saying, let's make these changes.
How would you suggest that we handle that? Solicitor,
I think at the next meeting, you could start to have discussion.
we discuss any changes that we'd like to put forth to the planning commission.
And if you have a majority that's in favor of that, then you can add it to the list and be sent to the planning commission.
And our next meeting is before the planning commission meeting.
At 22nd, right?
Yep.
So we can prepare to discuss then if we have changes that we agree on, if we have no changes and are ready to proceed, or if we have substantial changes that need further discussion, and we want to ask the planning commission to delay.
I think if we can get that out ASAP versus Tuesday or Wednesday before the meeting.
Yeah, we'll get it out. I think there are some edits that need to be incorporated, but we can make the goal of Monday. And that way you have it for a week and a half before the next meeting.
The other major thing that was discussed in the steering committee meeting was the recommendation that came out of the planning commission. The planning commission reviewed the updated draft at their July meeting, and they made a recommendation that we proceed with it, but remove one section on the accessory dwelling units, the ADUs. I wasn't at that planning commission meeting, so I'll give a bit of recap and then maybe pass it around for any other input. But at this point, it is just a recommendation to council. They have not voted to approve or not approve the zoning ordinance. They've made a recommendation to council to remove that. We can take that recommendation or we can not take that recommendation. I will say the inclusion of the accessory dwelling units language, it is a very common best practice. It is becoming increasingly recognized as a best practice. It is already present within our region. In other communities like ours, there are some examples that are historic examples that are here within our community. This was something that was debated at length at the steering committee and also at the open house for anyone who attended. It is language that I personally feel a lot of thought has gone into it. We put together language that is not overly permissive. It actually lays out accessory dwelling units as a conditional use anywhere that they are allowed, and they are not allowed everywhere. So there are restrictions on where they are allowed, and where we have allowed them, we have placed conditions on it. Those conditions refer to how large they can be, how many you can have on one lot, only one. The lot must be owner occupied. We worked out language with the solicitor's help that made that work. They also can only be on lots of certain sizes. You must still have a certain amount of open space. So you can't just build up every square inch of your lot. If you're able to keep the required amount of open space and you still have room for an ADU, then you can do it. So we did put a lot of conditions on, and when council, well, we can decide tonight if we'd like to remove it or keep it in while we review. But if council does review that language, you'll be able to see and decide for yourselves if you like the language or not. I think that a very good job was done with the language. So this council has a decision tonight. We can take that recommendation to remove that section, update the draft, send it around to council members with that language removed. We can proceed with the draft as it is, keep that language in and review it as council and see what we all think of it. And in either case, we have the ability to edit or update our zoning ordinance at any time. So we can keep this language in now and try to move it towards adoption if we decide we like it. And we build upon the work that's been done and we don't lose any of the momentum that we have. If we choose to hold on it, we can always add it at a later time. So it's really our decision. We've done the work, we have the language. I personally think it's good. It can be a decision made by each person individually. But there's no real, we can always add it in later. There are costs to doing zoning update, zoning ordinance additions, but they're far less than doing a whole zoning rewrite. It's public hearing, it's an advertising. It's a little bit of the solicitor's time. So those are the decisions that we have.
Could also include it and remove it at a later date.
Could also do that, could include it, could remove it. So I don't know if there is any other context on behalf of the planning commission or anyone who was at the planning commission.
No one who was,
Okay.
no one, well, except for Greg and James, were you there as well? Yeah, so they were at the planning commission, but no one from council was at the planning commission.
I left right before that presentation, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you. I didn't realize you had been there for any of it.
I was there for the first half, it was running a bit long.
Yeah.
As far as I know, because I only heard this verbally. So as far as I know, that's the recommendation they made, but there was no further description or reasoning why. So I'm not sure if there was a particular disagreement about it, or if they just didn't understand it and thought that, or just debated it long enough that I've been on the planning commission and those meetings have gone long at times. They may have just gotten to a point that they had discussed it out. I don't know. I don't have any further context as to where that came from. So that's the decision we have as council. Do we need to just discuss it or? We don't need a motion, right?
I mean,
It's up to you, yeah.
I mean, it was my understanding as I sat in that meeting, that if we're gonna give it to council, we give it to them complete with the recommendation that the planning commission is recommending removing this section. So it's really clear and everybody has a chance to see how it is worded now. That was my takeaway.
Yeah.
That's
what I would do.
Are they permitted now?
They're not permitted now.
Okay,
No.
so this would be an add
Yes.
into our current zoning.
Yes.
Okay,
We have, although
I mean,
Oh,
they
no, there are-
exist. They're not permitted now, but they exist in several places. around.
there are a lot of things that our current zoning code does not allow that are existing historic, some of our most beloved properties are not compliant with our existing code, which is very common around the United States and something that a lot of communities are facing and realizing that as they've implemented zoning over the years, they have essentially banned the ways that they have already built. So that's not specific to ADUs, but ADUs does fall in that camp. We do have some already, and no, they're not permitted under current code.
so, but they are non-conforming
They're
uses, and
non-conforming.
they are permitted to exist. We don't go
You can't
back
build a
and,
new one.
right.
and tell someone they can't do it now. You just let it continues. It's just new ones. At this point.
So what I would suggest is, as we advertise for the waste management, we also advertise for this again to have any public comment. I think it's important to hear. We did have the big meeting where everybody commented then. But to actually have the document to where it is now and then have it open for public comment like Mr. Roma did tonight, and then be able to make a decision if we want to make any of the changes before it goes to the county. That would be my recommendation.
So we will finish addressing all of the comments that have come in so far and then get a final, currently final draft out to all of council with the full text as is, but with the section flagged by the planning commission flagged as the section that they're recommending that we remove.
And when we put the savvy citizen out, we can put a copy.
These are
of-
the two.
Well, we can put a copy, we should put a copy of that. If you want people to comment on it, we would have to have a draft of that out. And I'm fine with that, but we'll make it sure it'll have draft watermark on it and everything else, but we can put that in the Savvy blast.
And I'd like to say that we're going to discuss both of those items. So we want to encourage public comment. Now, a question for Steve. We do public comment in the beginning and at the end. Instead of having people talk about everything at that point, are we able to have it during the section in the thing? Okay.
Council agrees, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Just to have people talking about the zoning and then the garbage and then, streets and other things, it's just going to be, okay. Okay.
Any questions on that item? And then the other update for Infrastructure and Land Use Committee, the Safe Streets for All federal grant. We've been looking at this one for some time and we are preparing for an August 29th application. That's the final round for this year. And this is a federal grant that we feel fairly good about. It has been underutilized and has a lot of remaining funds they're trying to give out. So we have put together a multi-municipal application along with Carnegie, Ingram, Rosslyn Farms, and Thornburg. Our manager has worked with those communities to work out the cost share amongst each. There's about a 20% match. And so across the 5 communities, the match is being split up and allocated based on size, population size of each community. So our financial contribution will be about $9,210 based on our population. And we will be applying for a $140,000 grant to cover those 5 communities under the Safe Streets for All federal grant. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2024-08, permitting the borough administration to apply for Safe Streets for All funding through the U.S. Department of Transportation in the amount of $140,000, joining Carnegie, Ingram, Roslyn Farms, and Thornburg boroughs.
So moved.
Mr. Holt,
Okay.
so Mr. Chandler. Discussion or questions about this? We've discussed it for a couple months now. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
That's all for my committee.
Thank you. All right, planning commission, Mr. Madilla.
All right, so like I said, I did miss the second half of the meeting, which we discussed the zoning updates, unfortunately. But the first half of the meeting, we did discuss the DCED multi-modal grant. And also, we also had the land value tax presentation, which was really, really informative. But yeah, really no updates besides that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madilla. Communication and recreation. Replace the Ms. Bolenbacher, Mr. Host.
Taking over for Erin this evening in her absence. Thanks to anyone and everyone that came to and volunteered at the disco themed senior dinner on Saturday, August 3rd. I was unfortunately not able to attend due to some prior engagements, but I was told it was a really good time. There were 30 people in attendance, and also thanks to DJ Whiteclaw for the entertainment. And I also say I still think that's the best, probably one of the best DJ names. So kudos to him.
Which he also had before Whitefall came out.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you might have a trademark thing going on there. Yes. Also, thanks to Rockefellers for the delicious food. Upcoming events, Fall Fest is Saturday, September 28th, beginning at 1 p.m. through 6 p.m. So far, we have 28 craft vendors, which is great. 4 food booths and 3 food trucks, as well as a beer vendor, which is Back Alley Brewing, same one that did the Music Fest as well as 4th of July. Still taking applications for more vendors, food trucks, and food booths. And those applications can be found on craftonborough.com/fall-festival.com, which I'll repeat again later. There'll be performances by Elements Dance Troupe as well as the Corn Liquor Saints Band. Entertainment will include axe throwing, face painting, balloon artist, a bubble house, inflatable obstacle course, kids crafts and spin art, touch a truck, which I have no idea what that is, and I still have to ask Aaron now.
Bring the trucks and
It's
kids
like-
can.
They just touch it.
They get to climb on the.
Oh,
on
man.
that sort of thing.
Okay.
So,
Big hit, great.
yeah,
Makes
so.
sense. Nice.
Works, they may, probably the fire department,
Got it.
that sort of thing.
Thank you. And lawn games as well. New addition to the lineup, if you recall at the last council meeting, we approved being able to lift the ordinance on dogs not being allowed in the park. It's only lifted for that day at this point in time, but as a result, we're going to have a Pup Fest parade and costume contest. So yes, you dress up your dogs and you bring them down, and it should be a good time. There is a $10 registration fee to have your pet in the parade and costume contest. Proceeds will benefit the Cross Your Paws Rescue. Prizes will be awarded for the most creative costume, funniest costume, as well as best in show. Again, please note, this is the only date on record at this point the dogs are allowed in the park. Okay. So for rules regarding pups at the park, signing up as a vendor, food truck, food booth, to volunteer, which we very much need volunteers still, or any other details about Fall Festival, please visit craftonborough.com/fall-festival. The Haunted Crafton Tour and the Trunk or Treat begins October 19th, and it goes through the 31st. On the 19th, it will kick off with the Trunk or Treat at Crafton Park. Haunted Crafton Tour is a self-guided audio driving or walking tour. And we still need houses. So if you have a scary story to tell or just want to show off your Halloween decorations, please be a part of the tour. You can find out more about it at craftonborough.com/haunted-crafton-tour. My house was on it several years ago. I wrote my own script. It was a lot of fun. So I encourage everybody else to do it. It was good. Got a lot of compliments. Also, the haunted mini golf will also be running Fridays and Saturdays. That Friday. Sorry, we start that again. Haunted mini golf will be running Fridays and Saturdays, October 4th through October 26th in the evening, 7 to 9 p.m. And some other upcoming events with details to come because they're still a little ways off. The next senior/community dinner will be Saturday, November 2nd. The celebration of lights will be Saturday, December 7th. And the holiday house tour will be on Sunday, December 15th. Regular season pool hours are still in effect through Sunday, August 18th. We've reached the last couple of weeks of the pool, so please take advantage. Summer mini golf is still running Fridays and Saturdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. through August 17th. So please take advantage because again, we're nearing the end. And lastly, the newsletter. Newsletter should be hitting mailboxes and be available to view to all residents within the next week or so. So please keep an eye out and take a look at the new format that we have. And that is all I have. Any questions?
What's the last day of the pool season?
Last day of the pool of regular hours is Sunday, August 18th. And then I believe the following weekend, we still have regular hours. Is that correct?
I don't remember.
I have to double check because I know once College School District begins, they shift it because they lose a lot of the lifeguards primarily. So they're typically not any evening hours, but I'd have to find out for sure. I
They
believe
they do start closing at 7.
Yeah.
I think they're already starting.
They're
now.
already closing
Right,
at 7
yeah.
in August.
Right, but I thought that was the only change, and then they closed, maybe the last weekend.
I have to double check.
The closing weekend is still Labor Day weekend.
I believe so.
I think you said September 18th.
I'm sorry, I meant August
August
18th.
18th.
Apologies.
So maybe get something posted on the website or something so that we can on the poll, and when it opens and closes, lots of people are using it.
I think it already is on the website.
Okay. While we check, I did want to acknowledge one thing on the newsletter. I want to thank Miss Perry for her years of putting the newsletter together and in its old format. So it was done very well and served our purpose and communicated a lot out there. And there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that she put into that. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Because...
Glad to have be passing it on.
Yes, yes. So again, with this newsletter, you'll see advertisements in there. Those are paying for the cost of the newsletter. So there's still no cost or very limited cost for the borough relative to that. So. All right, commission vacancy in place of Ms. Polkownik, Mr. Radilla.
All right, so currently we have no openings, so that's amazing. Upcoming though, we have 2 recreation board openings coming up in September. And then in December, we have 2 zoning hearing board openings. 3. So
It's on.
so 2 regular seats and 1 alternate, all in December. If you want to apply, go to craftonborough.com /commissions to apply. That's it. Thank you.
Great. And the cog is on summer breaks. Okay.
You want me to update the hours? So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so the close is on the 18th, but then it reopens for Labor Day. It'll be open for Labor Day weekend and then it's closed. So it'll be open on the 31st, the 1st, and the 2nd, and then it's closed.
So August 18th, which is next Sunday, is the last day of the pool.
Besides Labor Day weekend.
And then it'll be open the 31st, 1st, and 2nd for Labor Day.
And the weekend in between, it's closed. So it's closed for a 2-week period.
Yep.
1 week period. Or
2 weeks.
2 full weeks, yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. All right, community announcements. The next council meeting is Thursday, August 22nd. That will be a big meeting, of course, with our not only the zoning discussion, but also the waste management and recycling. Home passes, I think we'll take that off probably at this point, yeah. Mini golf, Mr. Hof explained, and also Fall Fest. Does anybody else have any announcements? The Rotary did a great job with the llama cloth and rib and corn. It was probably the hottest day ever, but it was a very fun time. So we do it next year, which hopefully we will. You know, that will be definitely recommend people to go for the baskets, the food, everything. All right, public comment. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson, represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council has the option to respond or not at the end of the address. Please state your name and physical address for the record. Guess I'll just raise hands. Go ahead, Mr. Mosby.
Greg Wozniak, 1773 Bar Avenue. Tonight I heard that change orders were allowed on some of our contracts, and we're talking about the stairs project. I think mentioned this back in March that we should be looking at putting bicycle wheel gutters in all of our stairs so that people can push their bikes up the stairs. And I think at that time I was told that the contracts were out and that it couldn't be changed. And but now today I hear that there's change orders would be allowed. So what we can do for any of our stairs to put in gutter bar wheel gutters for bicycles, we should do it. Don't know why we didn't put change orders earlier to do that, but if we're gonna be a walkable, bikeable community, I think that being able to push your bike up a set of stairs in Crafton is very, very efficient for the bicyclists in Crafton.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let's see, James. Right. Anybody online, please raise your hand. All right. With that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.